There's a quiet moment that happens for a lot of men. It might be late at night. The house is silent. Maybe you're lying in bed scrolling on your phone. And somewhere in that stillness, a question sneaks in. One you don't say out loud. One that feels a little awkward, a little private. Is something wrong with me? You're not in pain. You're not sick. But maybe intimacy feels off. Maybe your confidence isn't what it used to be. Or maybe you've noticed that being with a partner doesn't feel as exciting as it once did. That was Josh's story. Josh is 32, works in marketing, engaged to a woman he loves deeply, but behind closed doors, something wasn't clicking. He told me I could get aroused on my own, no problem. But when we were together, it was like my body wouldn't cooperate. At first, he thought it was just stress, then maybe age. But deep down, he started wondering if it had something to do with the habits he'd built over the years. The ones no one talks about. The ones we carry alone. The truth is, Josh isn't alone. In fact, what he experienced is becoming more and more common. Not because men are broken, but because many of us, without even realizing it, are training ourselves in the wrong direction. Through small daily actions, rushing, zoning out, clinging to routines, we're slowly reprogramming our minds and bodies in ways that show up later when it matters most. So today we're going to open that conversation. Gently, honestly, without shame. This video isn't about judgment. It's about understanding. It's about learning what no one ever taught us in school or in locker rooms, or even in most doctors' offices. It's about 7 silent habits that might be affecting your sexual strength and how to undo them step by step. Some of them will surprise you. Some might feel uncomfortably familiar, but every one of them comes with a solution, a way back to confidence, to control, and to connection. So settle in. You're not here by accident. Let's begin. Let's start with something simple but surprisingly misunderstood. Masturbation. It's a word that can make people shift in their seats or avoid eye contact. Yet it's one of the most natural things the human body does. In fact, from a medical standpoint, it's healthy. It reduces stress. It improves sleep. It even supports prostate health. For many men, it's a way to release tension, clear the mind, and reconnect with their body. But here's what most of us were never told. Masturbation isn't just something you do, it's something you train with. And like any kind of training, it can either build you up or break you down. Let me tell you about Karim. He's 36, works in IT, and always thought of himself as sexually healthy. But over the years, something strange began to happen. Alone, things worked just fine. But when he was with his partner, he noticed a change. His arousal felt weaker, his stamina shorter, and his confidence slowly faded. He started to wonder if something was wrong with his hormones, or if age had caught up with him too soon. But when he finally opened up to a urologist, what he heard surprised him.
"It's not your age,"
the doctor said.
"It's your routine."
Karim, like so many men, had developed a very fixed, fast, and isolated way of stimulating himself. Same time, same place, same goal, over and over. And over time, his brain adapted. It started to associate pleasure only with that particular scenario. His arousal system wasn't broken, it had just been overly trained in one direction. That's where the science comes in. Our brains are constantly rewiring themselves through something called neuroplasticity. Every action we repeat strengthens certain neural pathways. The more you do something, the more automatic it becomes. That's great when you're learning a new skill or forming a healthy habit, but it can work against you when it comes to your sexuality. If you train your body to climax quickly without variety, without connection, without presence, you're building a reflex. One that may not serve you when it's time to connect with someone else. And this is the part that matters. Masturbation isn't the problem. It's how you do it. Used wisely, it's a powerful form of self-connection and sexual resilience. But if it becomes rushed, repetitive, and disconnected, it slowly reshapes your arousal system in ways that can lead to premature ejaculation, reduced sensitivity, and even erectile dysfunction in real-life intimacy. Kareem's journey didn't end with that doctor's visit. He began to slow down, to change how he approached solo time, not as a quick release, but as practice. He said, "It felt weird at first, but over time I started to feel in control again. And that's the lesson. You're not stuck. You're just trained and you can retrain." So, in this next part, we're going to dive deeper into the first and most common habit that causes trouble. It's something almost every man has done. A behavior that starts with convenience and ends with frustration. Let's talk about rushing and why speed might be stealing your stamina. Picture this. You're home alone. Maybe you've had a long day. You're tired, maybe a little stressed. You just want to release, quick, quiet, and done. No distractions, no emotions. Just in and out like checking something off a list. At first it seems harmless, a 2-minute detour before sleep. But what if I told you that this repeated pattern done often enough might be secretly training your body against you? That's exactly what happened to Ben. Ben's 28, single and in great shape. But he came to his doctor with a quiet concern. He said, "When I'm alone, I finish in under 2 minutes. But when I'm with someone, I can't make it past the start." He thought it was anxiety. Maybe low testosterone. But the answer was much simpler and much more common. Ben had unknowingly built a sprint reflex. The medical explanation is surprisingly straightforward. Every time we masturbate in a rushed, goal-oriented way, especially while trying to avoid being caught or interrupted, we condition our nervous system to link arousal with urgency. That rush to climax creates a neurological shortcut. Fast stimulation equals fast finish. So, when the time comes for real intimacy, when slowing down is the goal, and connection is the point your body doesn't know how. It only knows the race, the sprint, the finish line. It gets worse. The more often this pattern happens, the more anxiety builds. You start anticipating failure. You worry about finishing too soon, which creates performance anxiety. And what's one of the most common causes of erectile dysfunction? You guessed it, anxiety. So it becomes a loop. You rush, you climax quickly, you worry. The worry causes more rushing or even shutdown. And so the cycle continues. But here's the good news. This isn't permanent. Your brain is adaptable, and you can start rewiring it today. It begins by treating masturbation not as a task, but as a skill, a practice. Set aside time where you won't be interrupted, not just a few minutes squeezed between meetings or before bed. Real time. Let go of the goal to finish. Instead, focus on building awareness. Feel your body. Notice the sensations. Ride the waves of arousal and learn where your edge is, that point just before orgasm. Then stop, breathe, let the intensity settle, and begin again. This technique, sometimes called edging or start-stop, helps retrain your nervous system to handle high arousal without immediately rushing to climax. Over time, you gain something powerful: control. And with control comes confidence. Because when you know how to manage your own responses, you stop fearing them. That was Ben's turning point. He started carving out time once or twice a week to slow down. No pressure, no porn, no rush. And within a month, his performance anxiety began to fade. He said, "It's like I finally remembered what it felt like to enjoy, not just release." And that's the lesson here. Quickness is not your enemy, but habitually rushing through your own pleasure without awareness is. Slow down, and you might just find that you're capable of more than you ever imagined. Now, if rushing is the first silent saboteur, the second is one most of us never question because it feels so normal. It's literally everywhere. Let's talk about porn and why it might be hijacking your arousal system in ways you never intended. Let's be honest. For most guys, porn has been around for as long as we've known what arousal is. It's easy. It's private. And let's face it, it works. Or at least it used to. But what happens when the thing that used to light the fire now barely sparks anything at all? That was the question Diego found himself asking. He was 35, newly married, and genuinely in love with his wife. But when they were alone together, something was missing. He couldn't explain it. He wanted her. He cared for her. But his body wouldn't always respond. At first, he blamed stress, work, fatigue. But deep down, he knew there was more. Because alone, he had no issue. In fact, he'd been relying on porn almost daily since his teens. Always with the same pattern: scroll, click, finish, move on. It had become his normal. And that's when he heard a term he'd never considered before. PIED, porn-induced erectile dysfunction. Now, this isn't about guilt or shame. This is about how the brain actually works. See, porn doesn't just show you images, it floods your brain with dopamine, the neurotransmitter linked to pleasure and motivation. Every new video, every new face, every intense scene adds another spike. But here's the catch. The more dopamine hits you get, the more your brain starts adapting. It becomes harder to feel aroused by anything less intense. This process is called desensitization. So when Diego was with his wife, real touch, real eye contact, real connection, his brain didn't recognize it as enough, not because she wasn't attractive, but because his arousal system had been conditioned to respond to fast-cut scenes, constant novelty, and scripted extremes. The result? Difficulty staying hard, disconnection, frustration, and worst of all, confusion. Because when your body doesn't match your desire, it can feel like betrayal. But here's what Diego did. He started a digital detox. No more videos, no more endless tabs. He gave himself a few weeks, just enough to let his brain start recalibrating. At first, it was hard. His arousal felt dull. He doubted whether anything was changing. But then, something shifted. He began to notice small things again. The way his wife smelled, the softness of her skin, the way her laugh made his chest feel warm. He said, "It was like waking up from a fog, and the science backs it up. When you stop flooding your brain with artificial stimulation, you make space for real connection to come back online. And yes, it takes time, but the results are worth it." So, what's the lesson here? Porn is powerful, but so is your imagination. So is presence. So is the art of slowing down enough to feel what's really happening, not just what's on a screen. If you're looking for a stepping stone, try switching from video to audio or written erotica. These engage your mind without hijacking your dopamine system. They help rebuild your inner world of fantasy, the one you control, not one shaped by algorithms. Remember, the most powerful sexual organ you have isn't between your legs. It's between your ears. And once you start taking that power back, everything begins to shift. Now let's talk about something even subtler, something that hides behind routine and familiarity. It's the grip you didn't realize you were holding on to. Literally. Let's explore the hidden cost of repetition and how the death grip might be dulling your sensitivity more than you think. There's a story I think a lot of men can relate to, even if they've never spoken it out loud. It's the story of Liam. Liam is 29, thoughtful in shape, and in a steady relationship. But he came to a surprising realization one evening. Despite his love for his partner's sex just didn't feel as intense as it used to. Sometimes he even lost his erection midway, not from lack of desire, but from something harder to name. Eventually, during a late-night conversation with a friend, he heard a phrase that stopped him cold: death grip. It sounded dramatic, but the more he looked into it, the more he realized it was him. Every time Liam masturbated, he used the same hand, same grip, same position, same pressure. Always flat on his stomach, pressed hard into the mattress, focused on one thing: climax. Over the years, that routine had become so ingrained that his body could only respond to that type of stimulation. the tightness, the intensity, the exact friction. So when he was with his partner, soft skin, warmth, movement, his body didn't register it the same way. It wasn't wrong. It was just unfamiliar. And unfamiliar for the nervous system often means unresponsive. Here's the science behind it. Your penis has nerve endings that learn. Just like your muscles remember patterns at the gym, your arousal system builds preferences based on repeated input. When you give it only one type of intense stimulation, that becomes the new baseline. Anything less stimulating like oral sex or vaginal penetration feels like a step down, not enough to trigger the response you're used to. And that's how death grip develops. It's not about addiction, it's about over-specialization. But the good news, like any overtrained muscle, it can be retrained. Liam began experimenting. Slowly, he switched hands. He tried different positions, sitting, standing, lying on his back. He used lubricant to reduce friction and practiced relaxing his grip. At first it felt awkward, unnatural, but within a few weeks he started noticing something new. He was feeling more sensation, more connection, more confidence. Because here's the lesson, your body can change if you give it the chance. The key is to become an explorer, not a performer. Let go of the goal and start tuning into the variety of sensations you can feel, not just the ones you're used to. And this variety doesn't just help you physically, it helps you mentally too. It makes intimacy feel more spontaneous, less scripted, less pressure, more presence. So if you're someone who always goes about things the same way, start mixing it up. Think of it as teaching your body a new language. One where every touch, every rhythm, every sensation has value. Because in the end, being responsive to real touch, gentle, unpredictable human, is what makes sex so much more than mechanics. Now, up to this point, we've talked a lot about the physical habits. But there's another piece of this puzzle that runs deeper than touch or technique. It's the silent tension that builds in your mind. The hidden shame. The fear of not being enough. The inner voice that says, maybe this is just who I am now. Let's go there next. Because no amount of technique will work if you don't also heal what's happening inside. You know what's rarely talked about. It's not just the grip, not just the screen, not even the speed. It's the quiet weight that sits in the background of so many men's lives, the shame. It often starts early. Maybe it's a strict household where touching yourself was met with harsh words. Or maybe it was a schoolyard joke that made you feel abnormal. Or maybe it's years of doing it in secret, in silence, always with the fear of being caught. That mix of urgency and guilt gets locked into your nervous system like background noise. And over time, that noise becomes the soundtrack to your arousal. That's what happened to Jonah. Jonah is 42, a kind, intelligent man who never had major health problems, but for years he felt disconnected from his body. He said, "It's like sex always came with a layer of self-judgment. Even when things went well, I'd feel empty after." When he started therapy, he uncovered something he had never truly faced. As a teenager, he had been told repeatedly that masturbation was sinful, that his desires were wrong. So he learned to rush through it, to hide it, to never feel anything beyond the climax. And that never really went away. Even in adulthood, even with a loving partner, those old reflexes still lingered. His body had learned to equate pleasure with tension, with secrecy, with fear. Here's the thing. When we carry unresolved shame into our sexual behavior, it doesn't just stay in the mind. It shows up in the body, in the form of tightness, disconnection, numbness, or even the inability to stay present with someone we care about. The mind and body are not separate here. They speak to each other constantly. So how do we begin to heal that? For Jonah, the shift came when he changed the tone of how he approached his own body. He stopped rushing. He stopped hiding. And most importantly, he started practicing self-touch without an agenda, not to finish, not to escape, but to feel. He used slow breathing, a soft light, music that made him feel safe. At first it felt awkward, but slowly something shifted. His body no longer felt like an object. It became a place of home again. That might sound small, but it's not. When you begin to associate your own pleasure with safety, slowness, and curiosity instead of secrecy and shame, everything changes. Your body responds differently. Your arousal deepens, and that sense of being cut off begins to soften. So if you've ever felt disconnected from your body, if you've ever felt numb or distant or like something is missing even when everything should be working, consider this. Maybe it's not just physical. Maybe your body is asking to be trusted again. Not rushed, not judged, just listened to. Because sometimes healing doesn't come from doing more. It comes from being kinder. Now, speaking of kindness to yourself, there's one area a lot of men neglect often without meaning to. It's something that feels small, even silly, until it becomes a barrier in the moment you least expect it. Let's talk about condoms, and why getting comfortable with them alone might change everything when you're with someone else. Let me ask you something that not many men ever get asked directly. How do you feel when you put on a condom? For some, it's no big deal, but for others, maybe even for you, it comes with this subtle tension, a break in the rhythm, a dip in sensation. Or worse, that quiet voice that says, I hope I can stay hard with this on. This is exactly what happened to Darren. He's 34, confident, charming, had no issues with arousal until the moment came to use a condom with a new partner. He said it was like flipping a switch. 1 minute I was ready, and the next, gone. He felt embarrassed, confused, and afterward, he blamed himself. But when he opened up to a friend, he heard something unexpected. You're not broken. You're just not trained. And that's the key. See, most men only ever use condoms during partnered sex, which means every time they put one on, they're doing so in a moment of heightened pressure. All eyes on them, no room for trial and error. And if they've never practiced with one alone, their brain and body treat it as unfamiliar, sometimes even intrusive. Here's why that matters. The body craves familiarity. It performs best with what it knows. And when something as small as the texture or tightness of a condom feels off, the nervous system may interpret it as discomfort. Add a little anxiety, and the erection can fade before you even begin. Darren's breakthrough came when he tried something surprisingly simple. He started using condoms during solo practice. Not just once or twice, but regularly. He explored different brands, sizes, textures. He learned which ones felt natural, which ones dulled sensation, and which ones gave him that barely there feeling. He even practiced putting them on slowly, mindfully, without rushing. Within a few weeks, his confidence shifted. The next time he was with someone, the condom wasn't a disruption. It was part of the rhythm. No fumbling, no panic, just presence. And that's the lesson here. If you treat condoms like an afterthought, your body will too. But if you make them a normal, even sensual part of your solo time, you rewire your brain to accept them as part of pleasure, not something that takes it away. So, experiment. Play. Give yourself permission to explore, not just endure. Because the better you know your tools, the more confident you'll feel when the moment really matters. Now we've talked about rushing, about porn, about grip shame and condoms. But what if all of that is just the beginning? What if you're ready to go deeper, not just to fix what's wrong, but to build something better? In this final part, we'll look at how to rebuild your connection with your body from the ground up. One step at a time. No gimmicks, no pressure, just real change rooted in practice. Let's finish strong. There's something incredibly human about wanting to feel normal again, to wake up in the morning with energy, to feel that quiet spark of confidence when you look at yourself in the mirror, to be with someone and not second-guess your own body. But when things feel off, when arousal is unpredictable, when pleasure feels dull, when performance becomes a pressure, it's easy to believe that maybe this is just how it's going to be. That was exactly where Marco found himself. At 38, he had tried everything. He read articles, cut back on porn, even tried supplements. And while some things helped a little, the change never felt complete. There was always something missing. And then, during a podcast, he heard one sentence that stopped him in his tracks. "You don't need to fight your body. You need to reintroduce yourself to it." That one line shifted everything. Marco realized he wasn't broken. He was disconnected. He had spent years treating his sexual habits like either a performance or a problem to solve, but never as an opportunity to rebuild trust with himself. So, he started small. Week 1, no goals, just observation. He practiced simply being with his body, noticing what felt good, what didn't, and where tension lived. Week 2, he brought in slow breath work, deep inhales, longer exhales, not because he read it online, but because he wanted to quiet the noise in his head. Week 3, he returned to touch not for climax, but for curiosity, exploring different rhythms, different moods, even changing lighting or music to shift the emotional tone. Week 4, he added mindfulness. That meant noticing his thoughts without judging them. When doubt crept in, what if this doesn't work? He breathed through it. And you know what happened? Nothing dramatic, no overnight miracle. But slowly, steadily, something softened. His erections became stronger. His confidence returned. But more than anything, he said, I started feeling again. Like, really feeling, not just chasing release. Because that's the real goal. Not just longer stamina or stronger erections, but deeper connection. First with yourself, then with whoever you choose to share that with. And here's what I want you to remember. This journey isn't about perfection. It's about practice. 1,000 small steps that retrain your brain and body toward presence, responsiveness, and ease.
So, if you've made it this far in the video, I want to say this. You're already doing the work. You're asking the right questions. You're showing up for yourself in a way most people never dare to. And now, before we wrap up, let's bring it all together. A final reflection, a recap, and a quiet invitation to begin again with more compassion, more clarity, and more control than ever before. If there's one thing that's become clear by now, it's this. Masturbation isn't just a private act you do behind closed doors. It's not just a release, and it's certainly not something to feel ashamed of. It's a form of relationship with yourself. The question is, are you using it to disconnect or to reconnect? Let me take you to James's story. James is 44, divorced, 2 kids, works in construction, a solid man. But after his marriage ended, he realized how little attention he had ever paid to his own intimacy outside of sex. He told me it was always just a quick thing. I didn't even think about it. I just did it. Like brushing my teeth. Except faster. But in the silence that followed his divorce, something shifted. He began asking himself questions he never had time for before. What do I actually enjoy? Why do I always rush through pleasure? Why do I feel distant from my own body? Those questions didn't lead to instant answers, but they did lead to a new kind of practice. James started lighting a candle before his solo time, not because it was romantic, but because it slowed him down. He played music he liked. He touched his body like he was discovering it for the first time, not just focusing on one part, but exploring the whole. Sometimes he wouldn't even finish. And that was okay. He said, "It sounds silly, but I think I started respecting myself more because I stopped treating pleasure like it was something to hide
or rush through. That's the moment masturbation becomes something more. When it becomes a ritual of care, of awareness, of remembering that you belong in your body, that your pleasure is valid, that you don't need to perform for anyone, not even yourself. And when you bring that energy into intimacy with a partner, everything changes. You're no longer chasing validation. You're no longer panicking about performance. You're simply showing up with presence, with patience, and with the quiet confidence that comes from truly knowing yourself. So here's your invitation. Don't treat this as a checklist of habits to fix. Treat it as a journey inward, an opportunity to unlearn what never served you and to relearn what your body has been whispering all along. You are not broken. You are becoming, and every mindful moment you spend with yourself is a step toward becoming whole. Now let's close this together with one final breath, one simple summary, and a reminder of what's possible when you take back control of your own pleasure. So, here we are.
If you've been with me from the beginning, we've walked through quite a journey together, quietly, honestly, and without judgment.
And maybe somewhere along the way you've recognized yourself in a story, a habit, or a small shift you didn't know you needed. We started with the simple truth. Masturbation, when done with intention, can be a powerful form of sexual training. A space to build not just arousal, but control, not just release, but resilience. And we uncovered the subtle patterns that can, over time, work against you. Rushing, relying on screens, using the same grip, same position, same routine. Carrying old shame you never asked to carry. Avoiding the condom conversation. Losing connection with your body. And forgetting that even in solitude you deserve presence. But this isn't about blame. It's about choice. Because the moment you become aware of these habits is the moment you regain your ability to reshape them. Let me leave you with Ethan's story. Ethan is 51. For decades, he thought intimacy was something that just faded with age. That was just how life worked. But after watching a video not unlike this one, he decided to try something different. He gave himself 30 days. 30 days to show up for himself gently, consistently, with no expectations. And at the end of those 30 days, he sent one message. I didn't just reconnect with my body, I reintroduced myself to my own capacity for joy. That's what this is really about. Not hacks, not quick fixes, but joy, confidence, a quiet steadiness in how you carry yourself, and a deeper sense of ease in how you give and receive pleasure. So if today is the day you start changing something, go slowly. Be kind. And remember, this is not a test. It's a relationship with yourself. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. And if this video helped in any way, if it made you breathe deeper, reflect differently, or feel a little less alone, then I'm deeply glad you stayed. Until next time, take care of yourself. You are worthy of pleasure. You are capable of change. And you are never, ever alone on this journey. Now, go. Gently. You've got this. Before we part ways, I want to offer you something simple, something real. Because maybe you're feeling a little inspired right now, motivated even. But you're also wondering, okay, what do I actually do next? That's a beautiful question, because awareness without action, it fades. But even the smallest action done gently without pressure can shift the entire direction of your journey. So let me tell you about someone named Rafi. Rafi is 39. He watched a video like this one a few months ago, and after years of frustration, he decided to try a different kind of 7-day challenge. Not a harsh push-through-it type of challenge, but something soft, doable, and most importantly, sustainable. Each day, he gave himself just 10 quiet minutes. No phone, no porn, no goal. He set the timer, sat with his body, and simply noticed. Sometimes he touched himself. Sometimes he just breathed. Sometimes nothing really happened. But by day 5, something shifted. He noticed he was feeling more. Not just physically, but emotionally. He wasn't chasing arousal anymore. He was meeting himself where he was. And that changed everything. So here's your invitation. After this video, don't rush to fix anything. Just start noticing. Notice how you feel when you touch yourself. Notice what turns you on that isn't visual or external. Notice where your body holds tension and where it softens. Notice if your pleasure feels goal-oriented or exploratory. Maybe you'll journal. Maybe you'll slow your next solo session. Maybe you'll sit in silence for 2 minutes before anything begins. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. And if you want a little more structure, you can even make your own 7-day practice, just like Rafi did. 1 intention per day. Not to master anything, but to meet yourself. To turn something automatic into something meaningful. Because here's the truth, no one talks about enough. Pleasure, when approached with presence, becomes a form of healing. It becomes a way of coming home. And sometimes the most radical thing you can do is to pause, breathe, and choose you. So when this video ends, don't just scroll to the next thing. Take a moment, close your eyes, and ask yourself, what does my body want from me right now? And am I willing to truly listen? Thank you for being here, for showing up, for walking this path with honesty and heart. You deserve joy. You deserve clarity. You deserve connection. And it all starts with one quiet choice at a time.